Hello and welcome to Benocam. Today we are having a look at mines which have a connection to the Second World War. So it doesn't matter whereabouts you go in Cornwall, you always hear these stories of mine shafts which they've got military supplies thrown down the mine after the war. I've heard stories of Spitfire engines, I've heard old American Jeeps that have been thrown down shafts. Now, is there any truth at all to these stories? Well, we're going to go and have a look today because at the moment we're at Wheel Busy, this Great Wheel Busy. So this is between Chasewater and Scorrier. Now this right behind me, this is where American troops actually camped before they went to D-Day. And the story here goes that when they finished with their camp, all the excess supplies they had was actually tipped down the open shafts here. So we're going to have a little look here, and then we're going to go up to the north coast where there's another mine where we've actually found some old military remains of stuff which has been thrown down the shafts there as well. So let's go and see what's left.
During the build-up to the D-Day invasion of 1944, American troops camped right here at this disused mine site while waiting to embark from Cornish ports and estuaries. The 29th Division of the US Army camped here, and wartime aerial photos show the rows and rows of bell tents, which were the main sleeping quarters of the troops, and you can also see the dozens of open mine shafts which also littered the site. The troops camped here would then go on to embark from landing craft at the Fow Estuary and Helford River, before being transported across the Channel for the largest amphibious invasion in military history, when on the 6th of June 1944, more than 156,000 American, British and Canadian troops stormed 50 miles of Normandy's heavily defended beaches in an operation that proved to be a critical turning point in World War II. Back at the mine site there is very little left remaining, other than a few historic buildings which are slowly falling apart, and a number of mine shafts that have now been backfilled or capped.
So this is one of the remains of one of the capped shafts. There's a few of these in the area, and you can see that this one's been totally backfilled and got a cone put on it to mark it, but there's no way we're going to be getting in there.
It's what's underneath these capped shafts which interests us, and there is only one open mine shaft on the entire site which still leads into some workings. We've explored here in the past, but encountered some dangerous conditions while down there, so they are not areas regularly visited. These are photos from a few years ago, when we dropped the 75-metre deep shaft into some very poorly ventilated workings. The passageways at the bottom were that small that you had to crawl on your chest and push your bag in front of you. And despite finding some larger areas with capped shafts above, it wasn't an overly pleasant experience exploring here. We did find a few old artefacts, buckets and broken bottles, but nothing that was definitely wartime material. We also experienced several areas of very low oxygen, so decided to head back up.
Okay, so we're up on the north coast again now, and we're going to be looking at a little mine which is right next to Perranporth Airfield, and years ago it was used for dumping old wartime stuff down, which there's some interesting bits at the back which we discovered on a recent trip, which we're going to show you now. So the access to this one's pretty tricky, so we got the ladder to help us gain entry, and yeah, show you what we found.
These very scenic clifftop workings are the remains of Wheel Prudence, a tin and copper mine active between 1821 and 1865, producing over 7,000 tonnes of copper. Many of the mine buildings that were here were demolished during the construction of the nearby Second World War airfield, and again, it is said that after the war, unwanted war materials were dumped down the open shafts in this area, and there's evidence of this nearby on the surface.
You can actually see a load of the stuff up the top up here where they've thrown down. You can see a few old bits and pieces here. Look. Remains of an old jug and a few other.
To access these workings, we carefully have to climb down the exposed cliff paths, just as the miners would have done before us on the way to work.
Okay, so we are almost there now. Been a bit of a mission this one. Managed to get quite wet getting there, unfortunately. Oh, that's cold. Oh, that's really cold.
We arrived at the mine entrance only to find that the rope left behind on a previous trip had been badly eroded away by the storms, and was no longer safe to risk climbing relying on that alone. Unfortunately, this gave us no sensible option other than to return to film the mine another day using a longer ladder for access.
So we are back again with a bigger ladder. Got a massive long ladder this time. And we got some more recruits. And it's an absolutely beautiful day. Look at that.
Maybe you could just chuck it.
Well, we could try just chucking it, but I don't know how much ladder there'd be left if we just chuck it. What a fantastic suggestion. Let's just chuck it. Right, okay, we're up and we're in. It's time to go and have a look, see what's in here.
No.
Right, the way onwards, there's a little junction here. We could go there to the old engine shaft. So this is the way we want to go. Heading towards the shaft with the dumped material in it. And it's lovely and wet.
Very orange.
Very orange.
Gosh, they were shorts back in the day.
Yeah. They didn't take out more than they had to, did they? Okay. So this is the plank that we're just about to cross. You can see there's a big hole going to water. It leads to a really big cavern, which is awesome. To be honest with you, I would say it's alright. If it goes, we're only going to get wet, very wet. And we're across. Now, if you don't want to do that, Nat, don't do it, because it is a little bit sketchy.
Well, look, it's not even moving now. I'm going.
Well, that's because you're like half the weight of me. That looks brilliant. We've got some really old ladders here, which are really cool. And now we're going to go in and have a look at the junk which has been thrown down the shaft. You can hear the echo. Very slow.
Oh my god.
You okay?
I don't know. Like, I don't fancy drowning in this.
Look at those formations.
Oh, that's nice. It's
Got some old oil drums. So this is all the wartime junk. Oh wow, here we have it. Look at this, Nat.
What's that?
It's an old army helmet. Oh wow. Look up there. That's the remains of the plug. And I take it that they've thrown some pretty weird nasty stuff in on top of that, like lime or something like that. You okay?
Yeah.
If you look right here, look. Can you see the old army helmet? Look around it as best I can. Look at that. Oh, there's a hole in it. But still, for something which is 75 plus years old, it's in pretty remarkable shape, really. Not quite clean enough to put on my head.
So what we have found here is what's known as a Brodie helmet, a steel combat helmet designed and patented in 1915 by John Leopold Brodie. The pressed steel Mark I helmet was used in both the First and Second World War. British troops landing on the beaches of Normandy would have worn this exact type of helmet in combat, where it was more commonly known as the Tommy helmet or tin hat.
So we're stood up on top of the rubbish pile now. Look at that. How weird is that?
It's worth mentioning here that this whole pile smells strongly of chemicals, and without knowing what it is in the waste mound, it could be extremely dangerous spending any time in this area. Wartime dumps such as this could have been used to dispose of a whole range of now banned chemicals, and we would never recommend repeating the scenes you are seeing in this video.
Let's get something written on it. Food. I think it's like I don't know if that's like milk powder or something, maybe like that. We'll put that somewhere a bit more better. Preserved. Put that there. Definitely food cans of some kind. And yeah, there's all sorts here. Absolutely all sorts. Glass bottles, tin cans. A lot of junk. I dread to think what that white stuff is. I wouldn't go disturbing that just in case it's something really nasty.
What do you reckon? Pork?
Yes. Yeah, it does look like pork or something like that. Awesome. Oh, look, what does that say? Keep away from eyes, that says. These little tubes are anti-gas paste.
These tubes are Second World War era anti-gas ointment that was intended for use on skin that had been contaminated by mustard gas. Prior to the Second World War, it was anticipated that, as in the First World War, gas would be used as a weapon, and these packs of tubes were considered part of the countermeasure.
One last look at all the weird things. Time to go. You're right there now.
Here's the bucket.
There's some lovely buckets here, isn't there? Do you fancy a nice bucket for the garden?
Not really, don't fancy carrying it.
No. Looks even worse from here.
Is it?
Yeah.
It's a bit muddy. Oh, it's wobbly here.
So we've literally just gone across that plank and there's a very, very small amount of wood still holding that. I'm not sure how sensible that really is, but okay, so that's us back out of the mine now. That was really interesting. Lots of wartime stuff chucked down the shaft. And yeah, we've just got to get back now before that tide comes back in, which is going to motor in today because it's a big tide. So if you're ever thinking of doing a trip like this, don't ever repeat it without really good knowledge of the tides, or you will get cut off and you'll be swimming back or calling out the RNLI, which will be very embarrassing. So thanks for watching, and we'll catch you on the next one.